Hello everyone, I'm the Connoisseur, and this is my review on the 13th episode of the 7th season of My Little Pony Friend Who Is Magic, also known as the Perfect Pear, and I'm doing it with my lovely girlfriend, Summer.
Hi, Summer Sketch here, and I would like to apologize in advance if I sound like a potato as per usual.
It's okay. Just to let everybody know, this is going to be more of a podcast format. Obviously, my reviews are unscripted, so this is as well, but, you don't see my face because I just can't do my face and record everything all at once. I'll make sure to use as much video clips as I can to make up for this still image for the review. First off, the reason why Summer wanted to do this review is because she thinks that a lot of it has to do with our relationship, and we'll go into that, and I know that I said some of it in my react, but, there are a lot of similarities. This was definitely an episode that we've been waiting for literally 7 seasons, because, we've known about Applejack's implied parents being dead and their backstory, and, this is more of a how they got together, and I don't think that they're ever gonna say how they died at the same time, or whatever happened, but it's still something that we've all wanted, and we finally got.
Honestly, it was kind of a refreshing surprise to see how they lived rather than how they died.
Mm-hmm.
And it was really refreshing to see just a simple Romeo and Juliet-esque love story. It's just, really, really sweet. And coming from me personally, I adore the design for Pear Butter. She is absolutely beautiful.
Mm-hmm, the golden locks and, curliness and all. It's a very good design, which actually makes me dislike Bright Mac's design because of how similar it is to Big Mac. It seems like they have, that kind of a design for several ponies.
Plus he has Apple Bloom's colors.
Yeah, well, that would explain why Apple Bloom has
if you take out the eyes, he's like R33 Apple Bloom.
It might explain why Apple Bloom has her colors, but design-wise, it is very similar to Big Mac, which, yes, you could say is exactly why Big Mac looks the way he is, but we've seen in the show, in the background characters, that some stallions look like Big Mac recolors, and, I think that they could have been a little more original, but at the same time, I understand that they wanted to make the parents, look like the children, which makes me wonder, I don't know, I mean, Applejack, I guess, has that golden mane sort of a color, but definitely not the style.
Yeah, I guess that does raise some questions. But still, I do love the designs for Applejack's mother especially. She's absolutely gorgeous.
I like how, basically, the episode starts off with something as innocent as Apple Bloom going to get, something and passing by Grandpa's shop and basically being given some pear jam. And then going home, and as soon as I saw this, I'm like, I don't think Grandpa was trying to be mischievous or, evil. I don't think Grandpa maybe realized, although actually, I think by the end of the episode, he admitted that he knew who they were all along. But I knew that there was going to be some freak-out reaction as soon as she brought it into the farm.
You know what's funny? I've been seeing so many jokes of Applejack having an aneurysm whenever there's, a pear joke, and then she, flips out. Or any other fruit other than an apple.
Yeah, we saw it with the strawberries. I mean, yeah. I mean, was Pride of the Apples. That's a thing.
She Pride of the Apples, just like the fan fiction.
But it almost makes me wonder how, as we progress through the episode and basically the 3 Apple siblings want to go to Goldie Delicious's house to find out about their parents finally, and not even the parents, but find out about this whole feud. At first, when they talked about a feud, I immediately thought Hooffields and McColts, especially because Applejack said something along the lines of, well, I don't really know why this feud exists. So I'm like, yeah, that's pretty much like the Hooffields and McColts. You don't even know why, you don't have a good reason as to why this whole hatred exists. And that's why I like, at the end of the episode, how that hatred diminishes, and they basically realize, oh, we're a little bit stupid for not putting some research into some history.
To be fair, though, at least the Hooffields and McColts gave an explanation as to why the whole feud started. We don't really know why the apples and the pears hate each other, other than the fact that apparently Granny Smith hates pears, and Gray Pear hates apples,
and
apparently.
and maybe competition because they were in the same area.
But to be fair, in the Romeo and Juliet, which this is heavily based upon, they don't give a reason as to why the Montagues and the Capulets hate each other. They just don't like each other.
Yeah.
So I guess I can't blame the writers too much for doing that.
I guess. And as the we see that the siblings go to Goldie house, and they find out some backstory about how it started, and then we have this whole trip around Ponyville where they see the Apple siblings' father's friend Burnt Oak share some more dialogue about the story and how they were together as fillies and just loved each other since pretty much birth. I will say the fact that they made the baby ponies talk with those eyes similar to the baby cakes, whereas the baby cakes just make baby sounds. I felt it very awkward because when I see that design of like the newborn pony, I'm thinking they shouldn't be talking like that, let alone in such adult voices. Like Bright Mac as a baby was talking in such an adult voice. I'm like, that's a little off. They could have made him apple bloom sized or apple bloom design with like the eyes that look like eyes and not just pupil like dots.
I was just about to ask, would you prefer a flurry heart design?
Well, it's really the eyes. When you see those eyes, you think like, oh, they should be making baby sounds. They're babies. Like, I don't know. And I mean, I do like how we move from like Burnt Oak, a new character, and then we see Big Mac ask if he could come back another time, which was really heartwarming and nice. And then we move to Mrs. Cake, who's
crying. Berto was crying when Big Mac asked that, which I thought was like a weird, adorable
and then we move to Mrs. Cake, who shares more dialogue, and then we go to Mayor, and then we go back to Grandpear. The fact is that it shows how at least a few members of Ponyville helped Bright Mac and Pear Butter's relationship grow, and at least were a part of it, and helped to express how great these now passed away ponies are. And it definitely had the vibe of their spirit living on, especially through their own children, but not even that, through the town. I'll admit that the fact that a lot of the characters like Mrs. Cake and Mayor saying, oh, I just didn't know when to tell you about their parents, was a little, it got me a little upset, because it's like, especially Big Mac and Applejack, who are, adults, you can tell them what happened. Like, they were putting it off saying, oh, I just didn't know the right time to say it. That was a little BS to me.
Yeah, I concur. I mean, 7 seasons, people.
It's like, yeah, maybe it's sad, and maybe it'll bring some tears, but, how long are you gonna hold it?
Give the poor kids some closure, people!
Yeah. I like how, basically, with the backstory, we know that the apples and the pears have a feud. We know that they don't like each other, like Grandpear and Granny Smith. And we know that they're not going to approve of this. I know that they were going to do some sort of, not even a wedding, I wasn't expecting that, but they were obviously going to find out, and they were going to disapprove of it. And I expected Pear Butter and Bright Mac to basically say, you know what, screw you, our relationship is more important, and if you're going to move and not let me stay here, then what kind of a father are you, kind of a thing. Now look, yes, business and finances are important, and we do see later on that the move to Van Hoover was a bad mistake, because that's why Grandpear, or at least one of the reasons why Grandpear came back. But, again, at this time, Pear Butter was an adult, so, not that they have the same laws as we do, but she should be able to make her own decisions and stick to it. And whether Grandpear approves of it or not, it doesn't matter. And that's pretty much what happened.
Can I just say one thing, though, in regards to the whole Pear Butter, Bright Mac, and their parents not approving of their marriage thing?
Mm-hmm.
It seemed like Granny Smith only accepted Pear Butter when she said the apples were her family, too. It just seemed like, oh, You like the apples now? Never. Oh, you're gonna ditch the pears? Okay, I like you as my daughter now.
Yeah, and we sort of, that was definitely true, and, probably the same thing would have happened if Bright Mac said the opposite, or said, like, I'm a pear now, or whatever. The point is that they still had this feud, even after the move to Van Hoover, and even after they weren't in contact with each other. But by the end of the episode, where Granny Smith and Grandpear, make up, it's sort of like, the feud has faded away, and, the fact that the Apple siblings now are technically a half pear makes you accept it more. And it probably adds a lot to Applejack's character development more than Big Mac or Apple Bloom. Although Big Mac had a lot of character development just by wanting to talk more to Burnt Oak. But Applejack being such a hater of, oh, you like strawberries more than apples, or, get the pear jam out of the farm. This probably made Applejack's world a lot wider and probably opened up her eyes a lot.
Her world got rocked in a good way.
Yeah, because it's like, oh, you don't have to like one fruit in order to be a good pony. You don't have to, choose one over apples. It's fine.
Just because your name is Applejack doesn't mean you have to be limited to just one fruit.
Yeah.
Just saying.
And that's the symbolism of the tree that they planted in the past, the two seeds, and it growing into a really interesting and intricate design of a mix of trees and the heart shape in the middle. That was symbolism at its finest. Yeah, it was obvious, but still, it showed how, the apples and pears are together, they're one family. And it really makes me want to have Grandpear appear a lot more in the upcoming episodes when, we at least take a trip to the barn. Because something tells me that Grandpear is just going to be there, but not really talk. I don't know. I didn't look up who the voice actor of Grandpear was, and if the voice actor is one of the voice actors that's already on the show. If that's the case, there's no trouble in him coming back. If it was a special guest, then yeah, you're not going to hear from him much, and that sucks. So I hope that we just see him, because it seemed like they really were incorporating him into the family.
I do hope to see more of Grandpear too, because he seems like an interesting character, and we could do a lot more with him. He's also a very tragic character if you think about it. I mean, in a fit of rage, he ditches his daughter and only comes back after so many years when his daughter and her husband are implied to be dead. At this point, I think it's confirmed that they're dead. So him abandoning his daughter, essentially disowning her, was like the last time that he ever talked to her, and that of itself is very, very tragic.
Perhaps that was true. Perhaps they kept in touch via letter or something, but I know that Grandpear came back because of the fact that he assumed that he had grandchildren and he wanted to get to know them because he did regret what happened. And this goes back to the whole spirit living on through the children thing, and that's why Grandpear came back. And I also like how Grandpear and Granny Smith, they were giving each other a little quip at the end, but they were still being, nice, and you can see how, in all honesty, Grandpear mellowed out with age. He was very harsh and rude and yelling, but Granny Smith actually hasn't. Because we see in the flashback, we see how, Granny Smith was still very loud and that kind of whippersnapper kind of attitude. That hasn't mellowed out or changed or softened. That is who she is, but Grandpear definitely mellowed out.
Yeah, but to be fair, with a name like Granny Smith, quite possibly the most sour apple in the entire history of the world, what do you expect?
I guess. Now, it makes me wonder, because Granny Smith and Grandpear are technically not related. Well, okay, no, they're mother-in-law and father-in-law, right? I was gonna say, can a mother-in-law and father-in-law get married?
Well, technically,
they're not related whatsoever by blood. I don't know why. It just made sense that Granny Smith and Grandpear might form a relationship. It just seemed like it.
It's bizarre. Well, anyway, I wanted to say something coming from me personally who has taken psychology that I thought was interesting.
Mm-hmm.
When at times there were moments where Bright Mac and Pear Butter were being parallel to their children. For example, Bright Mac was honest when he stood up for his wife to be to her father, admitting the truth when he could have gotten away off scot-free. He was honest, just like Applejack. And Pear Butter helped Mrs. Cake to see her true calling when it came to making confectionaries and cakes and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
Just like her little daughter Apple-Bloom. So it makes me wonder how much of that is nurture versus nature. If things like that are inherited through ponies. That's just an interesting thing that I wanted to think about.
We don't know. Well, we know that their parents must have existed at least enough for Apple-Bloom to be born. The minimum amount of time that it would have been before they passed away would have to have been at least, like, it could technically be the day of Apple-Bloom's birth, you get what I mean? Which means that Big Mac and Applejack were, nurtured by their parents for probably a few years. So, maybe I don't know, 8 or 9. So, at least when it comes to them, they could have been influenced by their parents and their actions and their behaviors. Apple-Bloom, I don't know. Because, if we're talking about biology, it's like, yeah, Pear Butter helped Mrs. Cake get her cutie mark, which is what Apple-Bloom does now. But I don't think that there was enough time for Apple-Bloom to see that happen. So that's confusing. I don't know.
So for Applejack, it would probably nurture. For Apple-Bloom, it would be nature.
Yeah, maybe.
That was just an interesting thing that I thought about
it
back
is.
in episode. Me having taken psychology and taking an interest on the subject.
Mm-hmm. And you know what, I forgot, you were comparing their relationship to ours, and I know you were comparing it to ours because of the fact that, during the song, when we saw them standing in the little, pear and apple stands, and they were, sort of looking or reaching out to each other, but being pushed away by their parents. Yeah, that sort of makes it seem like it's a distant relationship, but we see that they're having the relationship in private. The difference is that their relationship is in private, and their families are against it, whereas with us, our relationship is public in the sense that a lot of our friends and online know about it, and our families are okay with it. So, I don't really see it as so similar, because, and not only that, but, Pear Butter, I understand that Pear Butter was going to move to Vancouver, which would, yes, make it seem like a distant relationship. It would have been one that both families were against, whereas with us, our families are okay with it.
Fair enough, I guess, hun, but let's be honest, that wasn't the only reason that I thought that I compared our relationship to that of Bright Mac and Pear Butter.
Mm-hmm.
It was Bright Mac's devotion to his Buttercup that reminded me so much of you and our relationship, because you're devoted, babe.
Well, I don't know what relationship.
There's a reason that I named you Casanova when we were still friends.
No. The point is that, I don't see what relationship would work if they're not devoted to each other, because if you're too loose, then, you might as well just be friends or something, you're not, if you're oh, I'm sorry, I wasn't...
Feelings are mutual, which
yeah,
I get,
but you're right.
But still, their devotion to each other is super duper sweet, and it's really nice to see just a simple love story, not overly complicated with all modern crap and stuff. That's just me.
No, that's fair. That's definitely true.
I mean, it has everything that I love about romance. I mean, not just the Romeo and Juliet one, but the fact that they met as children, which just touches on the childhood romance trope that I love so much.
Mm-hmm.
Because the love at first sight ones are cliche and, let's be honest, very unrealistic in many cases. But the childhood romance, they got to meet as kids, they got to bond, well, as much as they could, considering that their families hate each other's guts. But it just gives them a chance to develop their bond, get to know each other for a long time. And again, the relationship is so sweet.
I think definitely this is like one of like the top 10 episodes of MLP because they did go above and beyond in the sense that they could have easily just let Goldie Delicious explain the story, similar to how Twilight and Starlight had their episode with the Christmas episode, and how we would have a bit of the Christmas story, and then we would flash back to we would go back to Twilight and Starlight in real time. But that was the majority of the episode. In this case, they showed that the ponies of Ponyville, town's ponies, had an involvement and also showed how their spirit lived on through, for example, Mrs. Cake's, bakery, and through Mayor Mayor, being an officiator and doing all these legal things. And it shows how, the writers of the episode went above and beyond. Because they could have just done Goldie Delicious reading through the book history and, having a bit of their Bright Mac and Pear Butter's relationship and then flashing back to the story. But they went above and beyond by saying, there are more ponies involved in this. They really impacted a few members in the society.
Yeah, you people can say what you want about the writers for the current seasons, but when they're not focusing on pandering to the fans, they can create truly beautiful, mature, and very deep episodes that can touch the hearts of many watchers for a long time. And I think this episode has topped the Cutie Map as my favorite MLP episode. Everything about the episode was beautiful. The visuals, the story, the characters, and let's be honest, the music. Just everything about it was perfect. I give the Perfect Pear a 10 out of 10, would watch again.
It's hard for me to say 10 out of 10, but I really don't see many flaws in this. I mean, or at least besides the recolor or whatever. This is a pretty perfect episode in general. And I think that, that's pretty much it. I'm glad that we had to have this talk, and I'm, to everybody watching, please share your thoughts. I know that this was a very, very extensive review to make up for the still image and all, but I think that it definitely had a lot that needed to be said, and I'm just glad to have shared it with you.
And I was glad to do this with you, hun. And baby.
What?
You're the Bright Mac to my Pear Butter.
You're the Pear Butter to my Bright Mac. Yay.
This is Summer Sketch and the LP Connoisseur, reminding you there's more than meets the eye if you just dive deeper.